Continue 17.
Okay, we will go ahead and begin. This is our regularly scheduled city council meeting. It is June 20th, 2024. Let's go ahead and call roll.
Mayor Wusso,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dame, Councilor Godis, Councilor Zelinski, Councilor Weimer, Councilor Kaup, Councilor Schachter. We have a quorum.
Agenda changes or conflicts. Let's see here, Councilor Dem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move that we remove item 21 and 22 from the agenda for tonight.
And that's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously to move that one. Councilor Weimer.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I would like to move that item E, echo from the consent agenda, be continued at our next regular meeting.
Yeah, that's not the right way encouragement. The item 17.
I thought it was E coming off of.
It got pulled off consent.
I apologize, it did. I'm looking at the old one. As a correction, Madam Mayor, I move that item 17 be continued at the next regular meeting.
I second.
All those in favor?
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah. Sure, yeah. We'll go ahead and have Counselor go to start discussion.
Sorry. Why, Mitchell?
If I can jump in, I made that request because it was a consent agenda item, got moved down. The owner and the owner's representative, owner's legal counsel couldn't be here tonight. So in fairness to them, I requested that it be continued to the next regular meeting.
So that the applicant for the
So the applicant
changes
could
here.
could be here.
Okay.
And it's within the time frame.
A month away, because our next regular meeting is.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, we're working outside the time frame because the moratorium's in place. We're trying to clean it up. Without getting into the details, I just wanted to have them here to be able to explain their position.
So could
Mhm.
it because we're in a moratorium, and it doesn't matter if it's, I mean, it doesn't matter as much that we're outside the time frame. Does it have to be the July 18th meeting? Only because I'm not here.
Yeah, sure.
Could it be the first meeting of,
Quorum?
what's that?
Oh, just so you're not gonna be, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I was saying that we had a quorum issue on the 17th.
No.
Okay. It's up to
Um,
council.
Well, let's do this. Why don't you reach out to the applicant and confirm dates? Otherwise,
we'll
we're
put it-
pushing it out even further. And let's just see if what we can get done.
Okay,
Okay.
why don't we do that? Just continue it to future agenda.
Yeah,
Cool.
thank
Thanks.
you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, well, motion passes unanimously. Did you, Ryan, did you get all those changes?
I did.
Okay, great. We have council announcements, and I have one this evening. Instead of waiting till the end for council comments, I'm gonna tell you all that we received a 1905 postcard from Glenwood Springs from a 95-year-old gentleman, 96-year-old gentleman who has a history of buying old postcards and then sending them back to the communities and the locations that they came from. His name is Lowell Jorg. He lives at Oaks Assisted Living Center in Stockton, California. He encourages all to check him out. I guess this is a really fun article on him. So Lowell, we so appreciate you doing this. I'm gonna send his daughter and him an email and let them know at the very beginning of our meeting. We did a shout out to Lowell, and Lowell is famous for saying he hopes it brightens their day. So we'll just say to Lowell, we hope that seeing your postcard and having us acknowledge how cool it is that you do this, we hope it brightens your day. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll pass it down and everyone can look. Yep. Any other council announcements? And this is for upcoming events. Well, I'm just gonna keep it going then. City council and a handful of friends will be helping at the beer tent at Strawberry Days. It is publicly noticed, but now it's really publicly noticed. We'll be there on Saturday from 1:30 to 4. So Strawberry Days is a wonderful event that the community has celebrated for years. And we appreciate the chamber because they put on quite an event and it's a ton of work. And we truly appreciate all they do for the community and to keep that tradition alive. So thank you. Anyone else? We'll bring it back to council for a motion to approve the consent agenda, less. What's that? Oh, sorry, you guys. Council comments. Oh, I'm sorry, citizens comments. And we'll start with Travis Baptiste. Travis, if you can come up to the podium, you get 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself. Let us know if you live here in city limits.
My name is Travis Baptiste. I do not live within city limits. I have in the past. I'm here representing Sunlight Mountain Resort. I'm the Director of Business Development. The reason I'm before you today is to let you know that Sunlight is trying to start a mountain bike race series in the city of Glenwood Springs on our trails, specifically the Grand Staff Trail and the South Canyon Trail system. The reason I'm before you and not going through the other avenues is because I got shot down through all the other avenues. This is something Sunlight's been trying to do for a couple years. I really got into it with Parks and Rec, as well as the new Trails Division. Everyone was very helpful, worked me through the process. I met with them in the fall. The process went really well. They seemed very excited. We even offered to partner with the city on this event. They said, fill out the applications in the spring and we'll get this going. I filled out the applications in the spring and they both got shot down within a week. I went through all of the proper avenues to do this. They said there was no precedent of having a trail race in Glenwood Springs. There has been before in Glenwood Springs, but just not recently. And so it was a little bit frustrating, not because I got shot down, but the way the process went. We really just had a tough time. They had a tough time explaining to me why we couldn't have the trails. It was more like your application is denied. They gave me some very brief reasons that really didn't seem to hold too much water. There was no exact dates on all these reasons. I get into that later. And so it just seemed as though no one from the city wanted to help me in any way make this happen. There was no like, hey, let's try and reapply next year when we don't have trail work going on. This is a timeline to do this. There was no handout to try and help us through this process. And we are definitely not trying to make money on this event whatsoever. In fact, Sunlight will probably lose money on these events, which we are fine with. Of course, we are trying to create community ties. We have a bike shop in town. We'd like to turn it into a trail running series as well. So I'm just here looking for council support to maybe try and push this through. The last thing I would say, I know that all the municipalities around us don't own and specifically run their trails all the time, but places around us that have events on their trails, Rifle, Newcastle, Eagle, Basalt, Elgibel, Carbondale, Aspen, Snowmass. So we're the only people right in the middle that don't have events for our local community on our trails.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much for coming up. Did you want to speak also, or are you guys all set?
No, I was
Okay.
here for moral support.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? These are for items not on this evening's agenda. Anybody else here? We've got 3 minutes. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, we'll go ahead and close that portion. Bring it back to council for what I've been dying to do, obviously. A motion to approve the consent agenda. What's, oh, see, I just want to just jump past these things tonight. City Manager Steve Boyd, it sounds like you had done a little digging in on this. Do you want to go ahead and give us an answer on that as well?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we engaged in a conversation in the fall about two specific trails, right? One is Red Mountain and the other one is South Canyon. And it may have been in the interim, but we have very significant construction projects happening on both of those. And they happen to fall right in the middle of the two dates that these gentlemen wanted to use those trails. So we're very happy to work with them going forward. And I think that we said that. But on those two trails and those two times, we don't control the timing of the contractors coming in. So those were just not possible for us to do at that time.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and get some comments from counselors. Counselor Godus.
Yeah, have you guys, I think one of the problems, especially, are you looking for funding or just looking for permission? I see. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Coe.
I would just like to say that, you know, years ago, and maybe I'll date myself, but we had trail runs in town. We had the Duck Holiday Trail Run. We had the Fall Color Run. We also had bike races in town, different events that were more for locals, you know, it wasn't just about tourists, but just having those events, I think, builds a lot of community. And our trails, we have fantastic trail systems. We've built bike trails in the last 5 to 8 years that are well liked and well used. And I would like to see those trails opened up for the community. I'd love to see events like this happen, and especially if Sunlight is willing to come down and put the event on and staff it. And, you know, it may be inconvenient for some people for one day or one evening to have the trail used for an event like that, but I think we can handle that. And we seem to be able to do it we've got some for-profit groups that come up and I've seen some of the events in Two Rivers Parks and things. This, I'd like to see, you know, I'd like to see us make this happen. And so if the city staff can work on, you know, if it's not this year, maybe the dates can be more flexible in the fall or something, and we can get a time figured out for next year. But I'd love to see bike races come in, and I'd love to see some trail running races come in. So should they go to Parks and Rec, or should they just continue to work with staff? What's the best way to?
What's next?
Yeah, no, we're very happy to
Hope
work
this
with them. I
second-
mean, again, to be clear, the situation is in the two dates that they mentioned in August, these trails are offline. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. So we're happy to work with you next year. We're happy to work with you on other dates. We have not ever permitted races on either of those two things. So we're kind of starting from ground zero. So I'm sorry if the timing didn't quite work out, but we love what you guys are trying to do, and we're not trying to get in the way.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that'd be
Um,
great. Yeah, thanks.
Counselor Dim.
Just real quick to summarize, is construction going to be done this year? Up there? Are we finished?
Yeah, I think the window is July through September. Is that about right, Ron? October?
And no new construction slated for next year?
Not at this time.
Right.
this
But
time.
The construction on Red Mountain is based on mudslides from last year.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Does it affect the trail, that construction? Or just the road?
They'll use both. Yes, yeah, the lower portion of the trail will be closed to accommodate the new construction.
Point of interest, point of order.
Yeah, go ahead and light up.
If we're going to ask staff questions and they give us responses, just so the public can hear us, can we ask staff to come up to the microphone?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. Okay, perfect. Do we have any additional comments on that item? We all set to move on? Okay. It's time for Rio. We're going to return, and I'll look for a motion for the consent agenda. Counselor Dim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would move that we approve the consent agenda for tonight.
We have a second. Counselor Weimer.
I will second that.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the question. We'll just do it.
It passes. It's unanimous.
Great. Very good. We'll move on. I look forward to seeing a flagpole come up over at the courthouse or at the county building. Thank you. We'll move on this evening to actions and or presentations. Item number 12 is our Workforce Housing Fund Advisory Board recommendation. Our Development Director, Hannah Klausman, come to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Council. Going to try and pull up the share screen for you here in just a moment. I'm missing the key to get my content up on the screen. Who wants to help me out? True, I'm not on the computer. One moment, please. I've got another way I can pull it up.
Look at what I did. Right? I'm just excited to get to the comments.
That's fine.
That's what I thought was great. I thought that was my problem. I was like, that was
Okay, while I'm gonna pivot, because I'm good at
perfect.
pivoting on my feet. It is downloading and I will bring up the images that I really want to share with you and the public about this particular item. But I'm going to start with the rest of the beautiful words that we have while that's downloading. So I'm before you tonight. We have a funding recommendation from our Workforce Housing Advisory Board. As you guys know, this is a board set up to manage the 2C ballot initiative workforce housing funds. And this is the first major project request that they've had come into them that they had the chance to deliberate on and bring a very important recommendation to you tonight. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the details about the recommendation itself. We also have the project developers in the room, which is Habitat for Humanity, and they can answer questions specific to the project. And also, of course, it wouldn't be me if I'm not up here and telling you about the current state of housing. So I'm going to do a little bit of that as well. Great. So the Workforce Housing Advisory Board is making a large recommendation to council after thoroughly reviewing a project proposal from Habitat for Humanity. This is an opportunity to purchase an 88-unit complex that is currently a rental project. And then after purchase, this would be condominiumizing all 88 units so that they would become for sale purchase units that are deed restricted to certain AMIs. The full project would be deed restricted to Habitat for Humanity area median incomes. The recommendation that's coming out of Workforce Housing Advisory Board specific to a unit count is for a lower designation of area median income. It's like later. Thanks. My tech support is here and she's going to take care of all of my problems. So as I mentioned, this is an 88-unit complex that would be converted. So we're repurposing existing units. This is a incredibly unique and creative opportunity for us for something that doesn't need to be built. We talk a lot about development neutral. This is development neutral. This is a project that exists today. It's operating. People are living there. This would be converting it into something that City Council and the city in numerous documents has identified as probably our #1 goal of 4 purchase housing units that are affordable. So I just want to highlight, we have not seen an opportunity like this come by in the city of Glenwood Springs yet. I've been with you guys for almost 8 years, and this is pretty exciting to me as a project concept. So I want to relay some of the importance And in the staff report, I did point out the variety of ways that this meets all of the goals and strategies and priorities that we've included in a variety of documents, including our comprehensive plan. So when I talk about the complex itself, condominiumizing it, and the specifics of area median income, we're talking about creating units between $250,000 and $400,000 purchase price. I know you guys track the housing market. That doesn't exist. Our current median home sale price in Glenwood Springs is $899,000. So if you compare what we're getting there for the bang for your buck, if you will, that's quite a large gap that's being filled by this project. And the WFAB board recognized this unique opportunity and was really strongly united against the recommendation before you tonight. So WFAB recommends that City Council approve a $1 million grant to Habitat for Humanity for the purchase of the 88-unit existing residential unit building in exchange for 10 units to be sold and owned to individuals that qualify as Glenwood Springs employees. And I qualify that as employed at a business within the municipal boundary or for a business with headquarters located within the municipal boundary. And that would be set to a purchase price affordable to those at or below 120% area median income, with the stipulation that the 10 units would be achieved with the first full ownership timeframe. We did have a work session on this where we're talking, this is an existing residential building with tenants in it. So Habitat for Humanity does have a plan for the tenants being able to live their leases that they currently have and also have the opportunity to purchase if they desire and meet the current qualifications that Habitat has. So that is WFAB's recommendation for 10 units of the 88, and the remainder of the 78 units that are not included would be subject to Habitat for Humanity standard deed restriction requirements, which are also including a regional employment area requirement that they can speak to as well. So the 2C funding that we have, and WFAB is the managers of and recommending body to you, is a more narrow fund than the rest of the project would be stipulated to. So it was a very great opportunity for us to utilize those funds of a very narrow bucket and say, this is the amount of money, in this case, $1 million to convert 10 units to affordable for purchase at 120% area median income. As I mentioned, that's between $250,000 and $400,000 purchase price. Let's see, I'm sharing. Great, here comes the doom and gloom of why this project and this opportunity is so crucial to Glenwood Springs. And this information was shared with WFAB as well. They are very aware of the doom and gloom. That's their bread and butter. So the screen before you is the percentage of home sales that are affordable to a household at a median wage. We've got two lines here. One represents the Colorado River Valley, which is in dark blue, and then the Roaring Fork Valley, which is the lighter line that's on the bottom. So you can see this is spanning from 2015 to 2022. This is showing the percentage of homes that are for sale that are affordable to people earning our median wage. You can see back in 2015, the Colorado River Valley was doing okay. 78% of homes were affordable to median wage earners. And that's dropped pretty dramatically, unsurprisingly, down to 37% today. In the Roaring Fork Valley, you can see they started off with much lower, 23% being affordable to medium age earners back in 2015, and that's dropped down to a staggering 9%. Interestingly enough, we're part of both of these river valleys. So Glenwood is a part of both of those lines. But that is a pretty stark statistic on who's actually able to buy here. And so when you get a project that comes in and is actually aimed at purchase units, that's getting at all the other 91% of the people who can't afford, it's a pretty huge opportunity. I'm going to scroll. So some of you may or may not be aware, this is an interesting new index that came out. Take it with a grain of salt. It's from a major news outlet, but they created a home buyer index. And I think a lot of people were surprised to find that unfortunately Garfield County came in as #1, but not a #1 that we want. And the #1 is the most difficult and challenging place to purchase a home in the entire country. Now they have a lot of variables that they're throwing into that, but it's staggering nonetheless. And so that's out there. So you can see we're number one against our 6 adjacent counties. We're number one in the state of Colorado. And unfortunately, we are number one out of 1,274 nationally. So that just further illustrates the issue that we've got today. And it was, we do reports and studies, and then this comes out and you see it on the national level. And it's like, oh my. So I just wanted to give you guys the newest context that we have, and we're getting recognized on a national level for a situation that is very challenging. And this project has a great opportunity to get 88 units that's going to help exactly that. So I'm talking a lot about one of our major difficulties, which is for sale product. So I just want to call your attention to the fact that over the last 15 years, Glenwood Springs has only seen one for sale multifamily development come into the city. Just one. 21 units. That's Solstice out near Cardiff Glen. That's the only for sale multifamily project that has come in the last 15 years. So this is another unique opportunity in that we don't have to build this project. It already exists, but we're converting it to that very beneficial for sale and affordable component. I can't drive home the affordability component enough because there's rental and we have market rate rents, but the affordability gap for sale purchase is even further apart, so that it's just not achievable. So the $1 million in grant funding to secure 10 units really represents a significant cost savings over other methods of obtaining this very product. You can't build it for $200,000 a unit. Developers are certainly not bringing that product to us on the for sale side. So there's a lot of components that this project checks all the boxes on, of getting at all the things that you and the community and staff have been working so hard to achieve. And it's kind of wrapped up in a pretty box. Of course, I have to bring up the comprehensive plan goals and strategies to you guys, because this one checks a lot of the boxes there. I've detailed them in the staff report and given you an analysis. One of the main ones that I wanted to pull out, actually from strategies of how to get at more affordable housing, is to provide incentives for developers to build condos or townhouse units, including identifying and supporting condominiumization opportunities to increase homeownership. I read this and I was like, wow, we had a crystal ball that this project was coming, because that's exactly what this is. So that was exciting. We actually get to implement our comprehensive plan right here today with that statement. And then I also included, we have our inclusionary zoning tool that's within our code now. And so I did a little bit of a comparison. This project, when it was built, was not subject to inclusionary zoning standards, so they currently do not have any affordable rental product. It's entirely rental. And if they had been subject to our inclusionary zoning requirements, only 10% of the units, of the 88 units, would be required to be affordable. So that's only 8. And now you're getting 88, possibly. So finally, I think I also want to mention our Proposition 123 commitment that the city made. We committed to increasing our affordable housing by 64 units by the end of 2026. And I believe Councillor Weimer asked a really great question in the work session, that we had possibly met our Proposition 123 commitment. And the main difference of why we have not is the other projects that have come in are rental, and this one is for sale. So for the rental side of Proposition 123, the AMI level is set pretty low. But if you're producing for sale product, that AMI allowance is very high. So for other rental projects, we've got about 17 units that are meeting our Proposition 123. We need 64. So this will entirely take up the rest because it's a for sale project underneath that area median income requirement from Proposition 123. Let's see here. In conclusion, so you have the recommendation before you from the Workforce Housing Advisory Fund. That fund in it, as I mentioned, this is from the last quarter, is 2.3 million. So this grant would allocate approximately 40% of that fund. That is a very large component of what the WFAB board looked at, because they are implementing other projects, and they felt that $1 million grant out of what we currently have would still allow them to do what you have asked them to do in some of the other programmatic aspects, and still be able to get a good chunk of this opportunity. So Workforce Housing Fund Advisory Board is recommending the $1 million grant to Habitat for Humanity. And that is what I have for you tonight. I can take questions and then I would love to turn it over for Habitat for them to answer more questions from you. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and see if council has questions. Council Dunn.
Thank you. Couple of questions. Number one goes to Steve. How much do we generate in that fund every year, roughly?
1.75 million.
1.75. Okay, thank you. The other projects that the board is looking at, how likely are they to happen? How likely are they come to fruition?
I think they're working very hard right now on bringing you guys the rest of the programs. So a rental assistance program is also on the table for your review
Rental
later.
assistance, okay.
And then if I know you guys have a lot on your plate, so remembering the exact strategic operations plan that you passed for them is probably a little bit blurry, but they have specific deadlines for proposition acquisition, rental assistance, and some other things. So I believe very strongly that those will happen. They are a passionate group of people that is very dedicated to spending this funding from that ballot initiative wisely. And they saw this as an opportunity, but not the whole opportunity. A great one, but they've got other great things in mind as well.
Okay, thank you. I've seen you excited before, but never this. So this must be very special.
I'm tired, so I'm talking louder.
This must be a very special project. Have you guys had, or have they had discussions with Habitat about increasing this number and maybe get more units out of the deal?
There were discussions about that in the meeting, and they went back and forth on an exact amount, as well as considerations of should it be a grant or a loan. And so that was kind of, this is where they landed ultimately. But there were those conversations that occur.
Okay.
And I'm excited because this is the first time you guys get to actually spend this fund.
No, it's great.
And I know everyone's been waiting for results on this, so.
Right. I'm very happy to see this. So thank you, Hannah.
Councilor Godus.
Hannah, this is, in theory, this is a development neutral affordable housing project. Has other entities like the Western Mountain Housing Coalition examined this as a potential for them to buy in units for the valley?
So the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition is very busy implementing their first project, which is the buy down that you saw a couple weeks back. They haven't looked at this project specifically because they don't have funding to actually buy in the same way. But I have had discussions regarding the buy down program itself that West Mountain is implementing could be a resource for the purchasers of these units. So they could come and be possibly some of the first people to utilize West Mountain's buy down program to purchase one of these units. So it's a stack, right? It's all coming together in little pieces that make someone actually get to their opportunity.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in before the next counselor. When these were built, were they built to be able to be allowed to be condominiumized?
Great question. So we went back and actually looked from the building department standard. They were built with condominiumization in mind.
Okay, great.
So they check off a lot of the fire rating walls that are required.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there a change is there anything in code that says when we go from a for rent apartment style living to a condominiumization, are there any, requirements to have planning and zoning review it or anything like that?
No, they're not.
There's not. Okay.
Great question.
Okay. Regarding this, and this may be a better question for the applicant, but you might know, who manages the development? Is there an HOA? Are there, contingency funds, rules and regulations, things like that?
And that is a great question for
Okay.
Habitat, but what I know from working with them in the past, they set up the HOA for the building to be managed, and they're involved in perpetuity in the continued sale of those units as well. But you can certainly ask them for more of the specifics of how they do that. But they have experience, the Basalt Vista project, now Rifle, Wapiti Commons, and eventually the project here on 8th and Midland.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Cow.
Thanks, Hannah. I think you did a great job of telling us what a wonderful opportunity this is, and I absolutely think that it is. So there are details to be worked through, but one of my questions for you and for the meeting of the, what do you
WFAB.
call it? Workforce Housing Board,
Workforce Housing
Advisory
Board.
Board. I'll say the long one. There was talk about a loan also. So do you know any details on that or how that might work?
Yeah, so WFAB also looked at the loan aspect because there is, obviously, if you loan something out and can get the funding back into the program, that,
Right.
you know, that enlarges the pot that we have. So they looked at that and in discussions with Habitat arrived at that it wasn't the most beneficial for the project to get to fruition.
Okay,
And so pivoted to a grant funding amount that was a little bit less.
a little bit less.
Right.
And I guess that's what I'm just wondering about tonight is if we were to meet the grant, look at the grant recommendation from the advisory board, but also maybe look at an additional loan amount. And
I
we can
think,
talk with Habitat and see if there's any interest in that.
Yeah, the WFAB board is making a recommendation that's very specific, but they were certainly open to the idea that it could be increased or slightly, but altered. I think what they came down to is they were comfortable in grant form of giving the $1 million, and that's just giving consideration to the fund itself and how much is there. The loan that could possibly be in addition to it, if you were interested in, that money is going to come back, so that concern was not necessarily there.
Right.
I would say that those conversations, depending on what they are, best held with Habitat because they know exactly what they need to make this project a reality. So that was what WFAB was giving some credit to, is what do you need to make this happen? How
Right.
can 2C ensure that this is going to happen? And that's how they got at their recommendation.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Council Weimer.
Hannah, is there any requirement that these 88 units would be owner occupied? Or are they rentable? Can you talk a little bit about?
I will have Habitat confirm, because the 88 units will have Habitat's deed restriction that has a lot of those specifics that we've had conversations about, which it's a great question. They have the specifics of those deed restrictions in their documents. I believe owner occupied primary residence, it's what's used in that deed restriction.
Thank you.
Any additional questions before we have the applicant come up? Okay, we'll go ahead and have applicant come on up.
Sit.
Hmm?
Really? She's painting me up.
Totally. Okay.
She's like, sit, Mike, just sit.
Thank you for an opportunity to talk about really an extraordinary opportunity, I think, for the community.
Gail, will you do a quick introduction?
My
please?
apology,
Thank you.
Gail Schwartz, President, Habitat for Humanity.
Thank you. And do you live in city limits?
No, I do not live in the city limits of Glenwood Springs. But as we just heard, we have an extraordinary crisis in our midst when it comes to housing, affordable housing. And this is an extraordinary measure that is really outside the scope of Habitat. Who's volunteered on a Habitat build site? One home at a time with volunteers? Well, this is an opportunity to create 88 small owner households. And this is what we perceive to be something that is not an easy lift for us. We have gotten a wonderful commitment from First Bank on a first mortgage. We have gotten a wonderful commitment on a loan from Chatham come in, but we need to raise $5 million. That will get us to a point we can get to a closing table to make this a reality for the community. So what we're looking for is this investment from the 2C fund that can do exactly what it was intended to do. Stabilize your healthcare, stabilize your education, stabilize your economy and your Main Street. What we are also looking for is partners. And how often have we heard from the different employers private sector and our public sector, how they need housing. We're asking these employers to step up alongside us. We have one commitment, and that's from the school district. But we're asking many other employers to also come alongside us and buy a priority. And that priority, we're willing to sell approximately 40% of the project with priorities. And a priority has sort of a unique connotation. That means, in the instance of the school district, that they will, in perpetuity, have 10 units that will have their school district employees living in. Should that employee, we do not believe in tying someone's home to their job. Should that employee leave the school district, they will in fact stay, but that priority, the school district will go to the balance of the pool. So we're looking at 35 priorities and having the remainder of the project be in an open pool. And that also reflects the fact that our first priority is not to displace any qualified individuals that are currently renting at the project. That will require that other 60% be available for purchase in an open pool. So that's where that breaks down. And we're hoping that this $1 million grant is going to be part of that 5 million that will get us to the table. And we can't speak to any of the other employers as to what their level of commitment is at this point in time. But we're hopeful that we have a very short time frame, about a month, to close this. And it is an opportunity to take 88 rental units without any deed restriction and convert it into 88 condominiums with the habitat deed restriction in perpetuity for that income category for people that live and work as their primary residence from Rifle to Basalt. It's a big investment, and we really appreciate your coming alongside of us. And hasn't been done anyplace else that I know of, certainly not by any other habitats. And recognizing it's a model. When you have that number of unregulated rental units in this community, we competed to provide an offer on this. The offering memorandum from the seller told Wall Street, you're going to buy these rental units, and next year you can increase the rent 6%. And the year after, you can increase the rents 4%, and 4% after that, and 4% after that. What that does to your workforce is it destabilizes them. This increase in rents is going to destabilize this community's ability to keep people living here. But what we hope is that through this pro forma, people will be able to own for less than they're renting, and that cost of housing over time will remain the same. The deed restriction obviously allows for a 3% appreciation over time, simple. But what we will do our best effort is provide some of our financing tools, and we're looking for mortgages that obviously we can do the 80s, the 100s, but looking for mortgages over 100% AMI households from other lenders to step up in this community and give us a mortgage pool that can make these purchases affordable. Thank you for the time to explain it, and obviously you've got a great resource here too, and part of Cipher, and they're bringing this concept forward and really in full faith, knowing we can do better for the community by creating ownership within this housing stock.
Thanks, Gail. I'm going to bring it back to council for questions for the applicant and Councilor Schechter.
Questions, not comments at this point. Gail, do you have a range, assuming all this comes together, which is a phenomenal opportunity, unique to Glenwood and the rest of the world? What are you estimating at this point, unit pricing on our range of our AMI? What are the units going to be priced at? What kind of range?
So you know what we do?
Yeah.
We always back in to the purchase price based upon the income, and 33% of their earnings goes into their housing costs. Right now, can't even imagine what folks are paying. 40, 50, 60. So that will be the purchase price based upon the AMI distribution.
33% of gross income in that AMI range.
And then we will have, that will include the HOA, answering your question. There will be an HOA that will oversee, and as the declarant, we will sit on that HOA until 75% of the units, according to statute, have been sold. We will leave all of the current leases in place. People will have the benefit of staying to the full extent of their lease or convert to an ownership.
Can you make a rough guess at 100% AMI? What kind of market price it'll be approximate? Just rough.
Mike, before you begin, just go ahead and tell us your name.
Mike Mercatoris with Slifer Smith and Frampton. We're brokers helping do this.
And you do not live in city limits.
I do not live in
Okay,
city
great.
limits.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But so as far as price range, again, it depends upon the unit, it depends upon the AMI. So there's studio units, there's small 1-bedrooms, and then there's a larger 1-bedroom. So they're gonna fluctuate across there, and they're gonna adjust a little bit according to the AMI. So have we set it in price? Like Hannah said, we're probably gonna be between, $290 and $420.
Okay. Thank you.
know.
Thank you. One of the other questions that came up, and maybe some clarification, whether it's clarification or request from council regarding the 10 units that we get priority for. And our restrictions are tighter than Habitat's general in terms of where people work, live. There was some concern about pooling. So, for example, if RE1 contributes and they have 10 units that they want priorities for their teachers, who could currently be Glenwood teachers or not, that's between them and you. The 10 units that fall under workforce housing and are more restricted, I think I heard a concern from council I'd like you to address is there was some concern that their 10 units do not overlap with ours. So if their 10 are filled and they have 2 other teachers that might also meet our criteria, that's a different story. But the overlap in the priority pool was a concern that I heard from this board, and I'd like you to address that if possible.
And to be clear, these employers are not buying these units for these employees.
Right.
They're putting them forward. They qualify under the opportunity to buy it. They happen to work in the area. So that's like, I just want to be clear. These aren't employers buying units and reserving them for their employees. That's not the way Gail's priority works. So I'll let her to speak to
Yeah,
that.
because I want to, before we move on, I do want to clarify. Mike, you are representing,
Really?
you're helping Gail. Can you kind of just give some clarity? Yeah,
So,
thank you.
Slifer Smith, I've been involved with the project. Obviously, I own Jang out there, and I was the listing agent when the current owners bought this property.
Okay.
I got alerted that the property was available for sale. It wasn't advertised publicly, and as a matter of fact, it didn't even have a price.
Okay.
So I knew that these units, based on the size and what we have, this kind of unique storm right now where we couldn't, with the way interest rates are and the way the market is right now, we could not have done this project 1.5 years ago. As a matter of fact, we're buying it at cap rate. Yes, yeah, Gail.
We don't need
get
that.
into the weeds.
Okay.
But we couldn't afford it.
Okay.
This project could not be done 1.5 years ago.
So who's
No.
we? I mean, I think for the public and this group, I need some clarity
Okay.
on why Mike is at the podium and Gail's at the
So-
podium. Thank you.
Habitat for Humanity
Yeah.
is in the process
Uh-huh.
of purchasing an 88 unit apartment building.
Okay.
We have it under contract.
Yeah.
So we have been collaborating
Okay.
and with Mike and Shiloh
Uh-huh.
and helping us with providing analysis, the due diligence work,
Okay.
the projections on what
Mhm.
makes it feasible. So it is a habitat project.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
we have the advice of these 2 individuals.
So they're working as your agents and consultants or some derivative. And I just want to clarify
thank
because
you.
you
That's
are
a-
up here at the podium
That's-
and I want to make sure you're not representing Habitat as like a member of the board or something like that.
No, we're
representing Yeah, flesh out my
Yeah,
question.
absolutely.
Alright.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted
That's
to
right. No,
clarify.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So if I may, before you answer, Gail, flesh out my question, make sure it's clear. My understanding is that regardless of what anybody else does, the ask is for $1 million for buying 10 priorities, if you will. 10 priority for 10 units that meet our workforce housing criteria at initial placement or sale. My understanding is that over time, if an applicant doesn't meet our criteria, they can stay in the unit that they purchased. And however, there will either be a pool or a next unit for sale that will get us back to 10 complying priorities. So if that understanding is clear, that's number one. Then I'll get to number two.
May I just respond to number one? Unlike the other employers, you're an investor in the project. You're not buying a specific priority for 10 units. But as an investor, you will be assured 10 of the homes will meet the 2C criteria. Unfortunately, the math doesn't work for us not to be able to sell the full 35 priorities. It doesn't work from a mathematical standpoint, but secondly, it doesn't respect the current tenants that are residing there. We can't layer another 10 units on top of the 35 we need to sell priorities to get ourselves to the closing job by layering another 10. So you will be guaranteed amongst the people that are living there, either with the employer priorities or people in the units as independent owners. You'll be guaranteed that as an investment, you will have 10 individuals that will be working and living in this community. And that's what you're coming to the table with these dollars so generously that the voters allowed you to have to make an investment, because this can't happen unless we find a way to work together.
And then in the case of non-qualification or turnover, what happens then?
And we represented, we will do an audit every year to make sure there are 10 individuals that are owners that are currently working in Glenwood Springs or working for a business that is headquartered in Glenwood Springs. So we will make sure the 2C criteria is being satisfied year after year after year through this audit.
And just hypothetically, if you may, I understand that, and hypothetically, it's possible that all 10 of over time, either initially or otherwise, even though diversification is a goal, theoretically, those 10 out of the 80 units could all be employed by one employer in Glenwood, but still meet the 2C requirements for income and work residency. Is that correct? Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Thank you. Okay.
And I would say that because Habitat these will all be resold through Habitat, meeting the criteria, that let's say it somehow or other out of 88 units, there's only 9 that are living and working in Glenwood Springs, which I would find to be the other hypothetical, then the prioritization of the next purchaser would be for someone that lives and works in Glenwood Springs.
Thank you.
So we would prioritize that as we would for either any of the employer investors as well.
And would Habitat be the auditor and manager of the deed restrictions in perpetuity?
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Counselor Cap.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Gail, Mike, for being here. Just again, trying to be clear, it sounds like if Glenwood were to make this 2C investment, that sets kind of a very bare minimum 10 units as the floor that live and work in Glenwood, and under that 120 AMI. Are you able to disclose who any of your other partners are at this point?
The only is, because it's a public record, is the Roaring Fork School District.
Roaring Fork, okay.
And the reason being that they have some has mentioned a great new rental project in Carbondale.
Right, right.
So many of their new hires and individuals that are working for the need studios and one bedrooms.
Yes, yes.
And that wasn't part of the mix in their project. And so this is very unique for that entry level individual. How many businesses are trying to hire, be it a new teacher, a new nurse, someone coming in that is just getting a toehold in the community.
Right.
And then let's create enough housing stock, there's some mobility. And
Mhm.
people can move either within a deed restricted housing stock or move into a free market. So what we
Right.
want to do is give a sense that people are not vulnerable to this incredible increase in rental rates, as we're seeing what the market is doing. Oh, go for 6% the next year and 4% after that. Are our wages doing that?
Right. Our own ownership is a great foot in the door. So I understand you're hoping to sell 35 priority type units. And then you'd have 53 units in kind of the open pool. So would the Glenwood units fall in the priority or the open pool?
Either.
Or either. So they can be either. Do you have any, is there a rough number on how many of the residents in the building right now work in Glenwood Springs? Just a rough percentage?
We do have demographics, but it's private.
Yeah.
You know, this is
Okay.
this is currently a privately owned
Okay,
free market rental property.
right.
So we
'Cause-
do know.
Okay.
and I think you would be pleasantly surprised. I can put it
Well,
that way.
we were given some numbers a couple of years ago. I don't know if they still hold, but it was above 50%, which kind of made sense, but yeah. And I guess my next question would be, would you all be interested in, if we were able to come up with another, say, 500,000 in a loan capacity? Would that be helpful to the project?
If we can't sell enough priorities, absolutely.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Counselor Zelinski.
So just curious, you're talking about selling the other priorities. Are you looking at local partners or is it regional partners? I'm just curious how many of those 35 priorities would possibly also be Glenwood Springs, or would they be more in the county, more in the region? Like, do you have a target?
Well, the geographic
Yes.
footprint is rifle to assault.
I recognize that, yeah.
Players from in that area, either, public sector, private sector.
So I'm asking these questions for clarity, just trying to understand. So like, again, to go back to Counselor Shatner's, like in theory, could we just have 10 Glenwood out of 88? Or are you looking at other, like, I'm just trying to understand how the balance of this.
I think that the 30,000 foot view is that it's 88 affordable units.
So
for the area.
I'm gonna interrupt you because I don't think, you don't need to sell me on the need or the value, or I'm trying to understand the numbers. And so I'm just asking really, really basic number questions because I'm a past employer. I have children. I understand the need. I understand the desperate nature of housing in our community. So you don't have to sell me on that. I just want to understand just the pure numbers of this project.
So I would, in my attempt to answer that is, our goal is 1, to stabilize households, 2, to stabilize our essential services, healthcare, education, first responders. Those are the entities we're going to first. Are they willing to come make this investment? That's a good question. So will we look more broadly our goal is for people to live and work in the community.
Got it.
So that is the number one goal. That's why we're building 20 homes in Rifle for people that live and work in Rifle. The quality of life you can assure an individual working in your community is to live in the community where they work. So that's our top priority. We're starting here.
Right.
And moving more broadly, but we need to have people that need to stabilize their workforce, come alongside of us and make this a reality.
So is it fair to say that your anticipation based on like the nature of this project is that it will probably serve the community where it's located more deeply than the surrounding communities?
That would be out.
Thank you.
Counselor Gotis.
Thanks. So I'm also having some trouble understanding. So there's 35 priority units. 35 priority units, and those priority units are going to go, you're going to offer those to different employers. And the only one you can disclose right now is Roaring Fork School District. What are you asking of Roaring Fork School District to be for them to have the priority number? And how many are they interested in buying?
10.
10. And how much are you asking them?
It's a public record.
Not yet.
It's not a public record yet.
Okay.
It's up to their, the board.
Is it
And
is
it's
it
in
is it
discussion.
is it going to be similar to the $1 million ask?
Similar.
Okay. I guess my next question
It's a
is,
good question, though. It is a good question.
so what, I guess I'm having a hard time finding, we're not a priority. We're not one of the 35.
That's
Why
the
not?
intent. Because now I'm not sitting in one of your seats. I've sat in other seats, but not in these seats.
No.
And I would say that you are stewards of this fund that is to help stabilize a housing in your community writ large. This is just my perspective. Stabilize community. Now, if the city of Glenwood Springs, as an employer, would like to step forward with city funds and buy priorities, great. But this is, you are stewards of a fund, and you correct me, I've made poor assumption, a fund that is of public dollars that are available to stabilize housing for the whole community. So to be allowing the fact that you won't have 10 specific employees to be moving into 10 specific units, but you will be looking at the well-being of the community, making sure there are 10 homes that will be serving the interests of the community. That's just my perspective.
So why can't we have 10 priority units?
Who are you going to put in there?
What's that?
Who would go into those units?
Well, so hypothetically, and these are questions, but I was asked a question. If you had 35, say you have 45 now priority units. So I would suggest that any other, whether it's Roaring Fork School District, the hospital, Holy Cross, any other large employer, that we just not duplicate. That you say, we have 45, and if every one of those entities has 10, and I'm rounding up here, in the 10 that are prioritized for the city of Glenwood Springs, no one would be a Valley View employee. No one would be a school district employee. We don't double dip. I think that's what I'm kind of worried that we're going to double dip. And I think that I'm sitting here kind of going, I have questions. So this, I was going to start to editorialize, but for a question is, I'm not, yes, 2C is city dollars that are generated from city tax revenue. The other entities, whether it be the school district, RAFTA, those are also public dollars, but those are specific to their employees that work specifically for them. If we don't put in $1 million, what exactly changes?
First of all, if you're stacking 10 on top of 35, you're going to be moving somebody out of the existing residents. So what our goal is to look at the existing residents, giving them first priority to buy those homes. So that's around a number that we feel would be potentially interested. So what we don't want to do is displace, but allow an opportunity for those individuals to come in. So by stacking, that is problematic. For us to get to this $5 million mark, it is this grant in addition to those priorities. That gets us to the
So,
about $5 million mark.
so you're saying that you can't go up to 45, or it'd be difficult to go from 35 to 45. How about how about making part of that 35 10 priority Glenwood Springs? Can you do that?
Then we don't
It already is.
raise the funds.
How much is this whole project cost?
We are not going to, we can't disclose that. We're in a very tight contract with a private sector landowner that we are doing something very extraordinary, very bold, and we're trying to respect the position we're in to be able to buy a property, but bringing in partners that make this a reality. And otherwise, you know, if we.
It goes away.
Goes away. So what we will see is Wall Street will come in, keep it rental, 6% next year, 4% after that. So we're just trying to, put the math together and look to the city to see funds for a grant of $1 million and guaranteeing there will be 10 of the units that will be owned and occupied by people living and working in this community.
The quote we were given on the other side from a broker on the other side was, we're there saying, we're working with Habitat for Humanity. And they literally said to us, the people we work with have $350 million war chest of capital to deploy at any given time. And I said, we're working with Habitat for Humanity. So this, to keep it in perspective, if we don't get there, there's already people lined up to take it.
So I think that to parse out, this is just where the map lands, and we're looking for a partnership, an investor, and are guaranteeing you will serve the very specific requirements of 2C and have people living there, whether it is within the 35 or it's within the other 53.
And those people within that 35, they're under the AMI. It's not, we're not putting in someone, you know, an executive and having them live in this. It's under the 35. Like Gail said, it's someone starting out. It's as simple as that.
So our long-term goal is to have people live and work in the community, stabilize your businesses, stabilize your essential services and your education. And I'm hoping we share that goal without this stacking, because we don't get to a closing table.
You've done this before. I mean, you've used private or employers to help leverage funding. How's that? I mean, have you been able to allocate like 8th and Midland? Do we have employers that yet, or are we still working on that?
No, we've done it. We really, this pool concept is fairly unique. Here we go again. When we started at Wapiti, 20 homes, and we asked for either the governments, the county or in the city of Rifle and Alpine Bank, all stepped up with funding a priority. That meant they would be guaranteed these 5 units, an employee from those entities. Should that employee leave city of Rifle, et cetera, then that city of Rifle would have priority for the next unit that comes for sale. So we're just dipping our toe into that and giving the assurance. It's like the city of Rifle said at the council meeting. This is part of our infrastructure. We will have 20 homes in Rifle in perpetuity that will be for people that live and work in Rifle. So this is part of your infrastructure. 88 homes in your community. They'll be deed restricted and more affordable than renting one of the 1,000 units in West Glenwood. Now it's soon to be more. This is just dipping our toe in and finding a scenario whereby we can start to stabilize these small families in the community.
Okay, Jonathan, I think you're asking great questions, but I've got everybody else lit up. So I want to just make sure you're feeling like we can move. And if you want to
Sure.
get a couple more questions on next round, I'm good with that.
Okay, okay, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. Counselor Weimer, we're gonna have you go. I'm gonna go. Then we'll do any last questions. Then we'll take some questions from the community. Counselor Weimer.
Cool, cool. Gail, Mike, thank you. I do think this is a really interesting project. My question, I have two very differently flavored questions here. The first, kind of touching on just this last round of conversation here. And it's almost my sense that the value proposition you are providing to us potentially should be tweaked a bit, right? That very, very likely we're going to hit our 2C goals without this funding or not, right? Just by the very nature of the location of the building, the people that you are reaching out for these priority sales. The odds are we're going to hit our 2C goals without this funding. And so this $1 million is not the make or break to hit 2C goals. Rather, it is $1 million that we provide to this very interesting project because we feel like it's the right thing to do. And there's a small increase in assurance that we'll have at least 10 units dedicated to local workforce. Am I correct in sort of restating that value proposition?
I will say that you're going to meet 2C goals, but we won't get to the closing table.
And that's the value prop, right? Is that we feel like this is the right thing to do. We understand that you need assistance. It's in our backyard, all of those other great things that we've talked about, but it's less about this guarantee of 10. And it's more about us doing this because it's the right thing to do.
Because you're satisfying you very proactively are satisfying the 2C criteria with this investment, with this very specific.
It's an active satisfaction versus a passive satisfaction. Yes. And then my second very differently flavored question is, so when a unit comes onto the market, and I lived East Coast, DC, very competitive markets for a very long time, a unit comes onto the market, there's a swarm of activity around that unit. Well, I've got all cash. Well, I'll go 2% over. Yes, well, I'll waive inspections. Can you talk a little bit about how you're going to control that feeding frenzy, right? So that you can maintain these units at the market rates that you're trying to establish.
We have a tried and true deed restriction for a habitat, or nearly 80 homes that basically.
But assuming that everyone meets the criteria, right?
Correct.
I'm going to give you cash. I'm going to give you cash. Oh, well, I'm going to give you 2% more. So how does that get managed?
To be a habitat homeowner, we'll go back to the very roots of who we are. You need to need housing. You need to be willing to partner with Habitat. And that includes 250 hours of sweat equity with Habitat. We have certain criteria that people need to meet to be eligible for Habitat home, because this is not just, an investment. This is actually an investment by the community and donors. Historically, we've had to subsidize every home $150,000. So they have a mortgage. So we build for 300, but we sell for 200. So we guarantee that 80% AMI household a purchase price that will be 33% of their income. So you are guaranteed, providing you can sell, but a 3% appreciation rate. You have to meet the criteria that makes you eligible to be a Habitat homeowner, that you're willing to be a partner with us.
Yeah.
And so I don't care how much cash, most likely these are households that are really 95% will be first-time homeowners.
I understand.
And just to get them to the closing table with enough cash to close. And our 80% homeowners are getting 100% mortgages at 2.5% now. And that's how we get them into their first home.
My sense is, Ms. Schwartz, that I still think there's going to be within the qualified pool, there is still going to be bidding wars. And I just would look to you to,
We
to
can't
manage
sell
that.
for more than exactly what we've advertised that price. It is set.
So then it's first come, first served solely.
So it will be, can you meet the criteria? And then we oftentimes have priorities. These are studios of one bedroom. It's one person per bedroom. The extent of their need, do they work? Is it their primary residence? Do they work in this geographic area?
So
we have
so
very strict
the mayor just said that you are limited by law or statute to not sell for more than the listing price?
Correct. It is a
Okay.
deed restriction.
Okay.
And it will be, these are the prices we represent. And this is what the home will cost because it reflects affordability by the 80% AMI household. Now, 100% could afford different more, 120 can maybe afford different price, but will commit, and that deed restriction will align the resale of that unit to that distribution of income over time. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
So we are trying to provide housing to those people most valuable to our community that need the homes and need to be, again, need the stability.
Thank you.
I'm gonna jump in here. You mentioned the 250 hours of sweat equity. How does somebody do sweat equity on a bill?
So this is a new concept. I mean, this whole thing is a new concept.
Okay.
I mean, you know, people, as I say, I haven't been drinking already today. I want to buy an 88-unit apartment building. So, but we have tomorrow, we have a homeowner services committee that will be meeting to discuss this exactly. What does it look like for sweat equity when you're turning over these small households? And so we want to have people just to say, well, right here at the Confluence and at Wapiti and Los Al Vista, feel part of a community. Through that effort, they won't be building the units, but they'll be building a community at the same time. There's such value to that. And so, you know, maybe it'll be less hours or whatever. But we're trying to sort that out. We're going to do that. And
Okay.
we'll begin that conversation tomorrow. But thank you for that question.
What happens when people retire?
When what?
What happens when somebody retires?
You know, this is our a habitat project. We believe a retired person, should they be able to continue to pay their mortgage, is entitled to stay in their community. Because that's the fabric of our community, not just workers, but it's also people that taught our children or worked at the library. That's how you maintain the fabric of this community. So unlike an APSHA unit, we're not going to ask people to leave once they retire because that's their home until they decide it's not. And we won't have the strict criteria that will require people that have to be living there, that have to be working. Does that make sense? I mean, we believe in that. Wapiti, we built 8 senior units, 1-bedroom flexes, ADA accessible, so people can stay in their community.
I think that speaks to what Gail and Habitat is trying to do on the larger scale too. You know, this is 88 units and it's happening quickly, but they're building, you know, they're doing their modular plant, they're doing all these other things to provide more housing and more mobility and the ability to move within those different housing projects. So to accommodate those things.
But the challenge,
modular project.
the challenge to the mobility concern is that we have a responsibility of 2C money that is for the workforce of Glenwood.
Right.
And I think to all of my fellow city councilors' points is, will we feel confident that we're satisfying that in a truly vested interest, a holistic look at this? And I want to ask you, your words you used, you said that we are being stewards of this money to stabilize the housing within the community, but the school district is using tax dollars as well as stewards of the school district to stabilize the education community. How are we different?
Well, I think of City of Glenwood Springs, and again, the nuance between this 2C bucket with an advisory committee and so forth versus dollars that came out of your general fund. I mean, I'm assuming there's there's a separation here between
Yeah.
2C money and your general fund. If you
Mhm.
want to come forward with general fund,
Mhm.
and you could have employees of the city of Glenwood Springs, your other tax dollars. I mean, this is just my attitude that you've got,
Yeah.
the voters said, please stabilize our workforce with these dollars.
Sure.
So my thinking as a specific employer
Mhm.
using your general fund tax dollars, that could be one approach, but this is more of a global approach that steps up to it. So what it'll be difficult for us to
Mhm.
close without this.
Yeah, I just asked because it's my understanding that the school district also uses their tax funds
Correct.
to support housing, and they have a history of it now, in order to do the same thing that we would be doing with 2C money, 2C money. Granted, we have a tax specifically for it, but nonetheless, tax is tax. And they're, hold on,
Sorry.
they're applying it towards housing, and so too would we. So I just,
Special tax.
yeah, but they use theirs for housing. So I mean, the school district uses theirs for housing. So I'm not trying to dispute it. I just truthfully, I like the prioritization. I can't help it. I want to know that we did a childcare facility recently and we got a priority. And if the priority is not, we don't need those spots, then it goes out to the general. But it's the idea that for $1 million, I would just like to have a guarantee that somebody doesn't have someone is their name with a box that says, I work for Valley View, but I also work in Glenwood. So they've kind of checked 2 boxes. So but that's more of a comment. So Shelley Kelp, we're still on questions. You've got questions?
I do.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Okay.
no, and I just
Oh,
had my back
that's
to
okay. I was
something.
just say I got lit up. Okay, awesome. Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I
have a question, but
Now I have to remember
I'm gonna
where I
leave you one,
was.
Erin, go first.
I guess I have a question for our city manager. Has the city considered, separate from the 2C funds, because the 2C funds were voted on by the community to be a tax to work on workforce and affordable housing in the community. So it's dedicated to that. And to me, this is the perfect project. And I've reached a point where I'm satisfied that between the 53 units in the open pool and I appreciate the fact that you want to work towards keeping existing tenants in there if they can qualify. I have to think that a decent proportion of those will qualify as employees within Glenwood Springs, but we don't know those exact numbers right now. But I'm wondering if the city has funds to contribute for a small amount of dedicated city employee housing like EMS or police or I know the city has always kind of said we're not in the business of housing, but at what point I sit on the RAFTA board, I see the investments they're making in housing out of pure necessity to run the organization. The school district is in the same thing. The Valley View is in the same. At what point does the city reach that point? And are we there already?
So I mean, I think that's a little bit of a bigger question. I mean, we have $10 million in unallocated reserves in our general fund, right?
So is that a separate conversation to have on this project?
I mean, I think those resources are limited. Is there a way that we could find some money to do that? Absolutely. But I think that would have to be kind of a thoughtful council discussion.
Right.
And you guys being able to understand, what the opportunity cost of putting that money towards housing would be.
Yeah, it's just a question that I wanted to throw out there, but I don't know if we're ready for a motion. Is anybody?
No, we're still
ready?
on questions.
We're still on
Still on
questions, and
Okay.
then after that, we're public comment.
I
So,
will yield. then.
Counselor Gotis.
Carl?
Oh, Aaron. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
No. She is totally, sorry, Jonathan.
I turned mine off. Can I jump in
Yeah,
after
no,
her?
you can
Yeah,
jump
yeah,
in after
yeah,
her.
yeah, no.
Aaron, I don't feel like, I'm so sorry that we have me tonight. Yeah. It just throws me because
I
get that
know.
person.
I
So,
know.
yeah.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I finally understand. I think I do. You got your budget. You've got your money. You have to sell 35 priorities to get there. We are investing basically conceptually. we are pushing forward an initiative that benefits our community and like reaches our goals. And so, you know, and with those 35 other priorities, 10 of them get to be in the city of Glenwood Springs at minimum, and possibly more if our, you know, we're lucky. Am I correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. I think I just needed like a really clear, like dumb, like explanation. And I think I finally got there. So thank you for confirming that.
And I really, and thank Madam Mayor, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from. We wouldn't be standing here if this wasn't hard. And it's just, none of this is easy. And so everything that we don't obligate ourselves as a loan to pay back, it all is going to go to the bottom line, being able to make these units affordable. And if we can't be assured that we can sell and find mortgages that can put these homeowners into those units, we can't close. So it is a really, really complex, and we're risk adverse as well. This is a big step for a nonprofit. And, you know, we're just a little engine that could. I mean, we really see that our goal is to serve our community. So I so appreciate how complicated it is. But that's the walk we have been walking, and nothing about this is easy. So,
We did get beat out.
No. Okay.
It came back to us.
what's that?
We did get beat out for this, but
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, we lost.
Yeah.
we lost.
And then they said, oh, would you consider it again? You bet. This is so important to the community, to take people out of this rental game. That's the worst thing we can do to our workers, is keep them in these rentals. Just saying.
Counselor Gotis.
Carl, legally, I mean, we can probably have a very robust debate, Shelley. Because you mentioned earlier that, yes,
He is asking questions.
it's
Yeah.
coming. About the intent of what we said or what the voters thought or blah, blah, blah. But legally, is there anything that would prevent this council from saying that 2C money should go to the community? And the community is employees of the city of Glenwood Springs. It's also others, but we can prioritize city of Glenwood Springs employees. Is there anything that would prevent us from doing that legally per the ballot language?
You would qualify as an employer that qualifies underneath the ballot language for having your headquarters here in Glenwood Springs. That's how you would qualify.
Okay.
There's nothing magical about being the city government. You're just another employer that would qualify underneath the language of the ballot.
Okay. So Gail, hearing that, do you see that do you see a problem if we were to restrict it to just Glenwood Springs city of Glenwood Springs employees?
Well, and let's do this.
I think
Rather than-
from what Carl said.
Yeah, and
But that's not
also,
what you said.
that's not what you said, but what I would ask is before we start negotiating with applicant, which I think is good, and I've been trying to do myself this evening, let's get through the questions that are truly like, we want to have an understanding of this. Let's get some public comment. Let's get a motion on the table. And
So
let's move forward from
I
there.
just want to
Mhm.
differentiate an employee of the city of Glenwood versus an employee who works in the city of Glenwood Springs.
Counselor Schachter, I just heard you say you'd like to make a motion, but I would like to open it up to public comment first. Yeah, so is anyone here for public comment in support of the project or questions or comments? And we will also be taking public comment on this item as well. So if you're in the public or online and you would like to raise your hand to let us know, we'll go ahead and have Cheryl Bauer step up to the podium. Your name, if you live in city limits.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Bauer, and I absolutely do live in the city limits, and I voted for the 2C monies. And when I heard this project come through to Habitat, this is just a groundbreaking project. You just don't get 88 deed restricted units falling out of the sky, especially in an environment where we need so many units. So as somebody who voted for this, and not just that, because I work for Habitat, so as a resident of the city, and I just see, you know, how difficult it is for people to get waiters and waitresses and bartenders and nurses, teachers. I definitely support this project.
Anyone else here? Anyone else here in public that would like to make a comment? Anyone online? I don't see any hands up. Okay, we will close the public comment portion, bring it back to council. If I could get a motion, and then we'll have a discussion after the motion has a second. Counselor Schechter.
I will make a motion, and obviously I will have comments when you allow me. But I would move that we accept the recommendation as stated and presented by staff of the Workforce Housing Advisory Board to grant $1 million as presented with the conditions stated and no modifications.
Counselor Coe.
I will second that motion with some further discussion.
Okay. We'll go ahead and open it up for comment then. I'm going to turn your mic off. Counselor Zelinski.
First of all, I want to say I had the pleasure of touring with PD Commons recently, and I was dazzled. I think it's such a really unique and cool project. I had a little envy when I went through there that it wasn't in Glenwood. So this makes me, you know, really, really pleased. And that's why I said, like, I wanted to stress, like, you don't need to sell me on this. I get it. I just want to make sure that we're being good stewards of the money and the trust that the community has put in us. And I can't fathom that anybody is going to look at us and say that this was a bad deal. But there's constantly an ask that we make sure we're serving the people of Glenwood Springs and not becoming a bedroom community for people who work elsewhere. And so, you know, that's where these questions are coming from. It's not that we don't, it's not that I don't believe in the integrity of what's being done. It's much more of like, I want to make sure I'm representing my constituency as well as I can. And that's really where that comes. But this is a terribly exciting. And honestly, I never thought in my 4 years that I would be a part of something that has the potential that this does. So I wish you the very best of luck.
Counselor Schechter.
Thank you. As not only the liaison and being through, I missed the second meeting, but listened in and talked to people. I was at the first meeting and have been in this since the inception. This is an opportunity, a unique opportunity that's fallen into our laps via Habitat that is unlikely to be replicated anywhere ever again, to get 80 development neutral, 88 development neutral units that can be owned. I have no question in my mind that we are being good stewards of the money. If you look at just the dollar cost, we're going to start out with 10 units at 80 to 120% AMI Glenwood employees there, and in all likelihood, they're already there. And now we're providing housing instead of rental. And rough numbers, I'm looking at, we're talking about $300,000 average per unit at our criteria. They may be more expensive for other criteria. There's no other opportunity like this. We are meeting the spirit, intent, and the stewardship of 2C. And I also want to point out, and it is our job to look at this at various levels, because we are the ultimate approvers. But remember where this is coming from. This is coming from a unanimous decision by our very thoughtful, vetted, active 2C commission. And I think we will be honoring them with integrity if we approve this motion. So thank you.
Counselor Kelp.
Thank you, Sumner. And I would just like to echo what Aaron said. Please don't take the questions. It's diving into the details. I think it's so important that council understands the commitment that we're making, but I fully support the motion. I don't know if you would be open to an amendment, but I would not mind amending it as just to open the door that if the funding is falling short, that you do revisit the city and then ask for a loan in the amount of 500,000.
I would say, I respond, as an amendment.
Hold on one
I'd be-
second. Let's get your mic on though.
Sure.
Yeah.
As an amendment.
Hold on just one second. There you go.
As an amendment, I would propose, I'm not sure it should be a second motion or not, because I don't want it to defeat the first motion.
Okay.
But either way, I would ask that either as an amendment, or if it's not an impediment to the motion, that we consider an additional $500,000 should Habitat approach us and say, we need additional funding. And we get a quick nod from 2C, that it be structured as a grant or loan. I don't care at this point, that money be available if it's necessary to close the deal.
Okay, we can do that as a
I
separate.
prefer it be a
motion.
second
I'm
motion
open
so
to
it doesn't
that.
cloud the first one. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I would also like to say, I would be interested in a conversation with council and city leadership, management level leadership on if the city should be investing in units, because it's a fantastic opportunity. So, thank you.
Counselor Weimer.
Carl, a question for you. Would we be able to make it a requirement as part of this project that Habitat creates an annual report and publishes it publicly as to who lives in the building, where they work, what criteria, specified criteria is? We don't need, PII or anything, but just some level of visibility into who lives in the building.
Yeah, I think that there's probably something in there we could do. I think I'd want to be very careful about, kind of personal information, treat it like we would utility information or tax information and do it, inside the town, inside the city, outside the city kind of thing in terms of employment status or things like that. And I think you heard Gail refer to the fact that they were going to do an annual audit. And so I think it's really more a matter of just having that annual audit be public information, and assuming that's what you intended to do.
Is that an amendment that we need to make to the motion to require that audit to be public, or is that going to be public anyway?
Well, I think the intention of the audit was to.
You want to, Mike, you need to come up to the podium only so that the microphone will hear you.
I think the intention of the audit was to make sure that we have that 10 people covered. I would worry a little bit if we were saying we want to know what every unit, is, and we want to make that public.
Yeah, I guess.
I just want the level of visibility into that we are properly driving our intended results with this 2C investment, and that the public, the voters can periodically kind of tune in and understand, yes, that was a good investment of 2C money. Look at what's happening.
And maybe what I'd suggest is, if you wanted to make a friendly amendment, that would be that Habitat shall provide an annual audit to the city, to be posted on its website, confirming compliance with the 2C requirements.
I would love that. I would love to propose that as a friendly amendment, Councilor Schachter, that we add in a requirement that the annual audit be made available on our website as to compliance to 2C requirements, so that we can have that transparency and visibility.
I think may I ask the applicant a question?
Hold on one second. You know what, we're protocol, we're not supposed to continue to ask the applicant questions. I think if you want to make a clarification, maybe we can wait until the very end. And
I'll accept it. I'll make an amendment then. I would amend the motion that reflects what Counselor Weimer said, that as part of the funding that we request and require some form of public annual audit that reflects complying demographics with our 2C intent.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And Counselor Cow, would you like to amend your second?
Yes, I will amend my.
Okay, we have an amended motion and amended second. Counselor Dunn.
Thank you. Just real quick, not too much. I'm a little bummed that it's only 10 units. I understand that there was other projects in the pipeline. There are other projects in the pipeline. But with a tax revenue higher by almost 500,000 than what we predicted, I was hoping that the board would move forward and add another 500,000 initially to something like this. So if a second motion does come up for additional funding, I would support that just because I think it's important. And the other thing is more of I don't know, an epiphany that when the mayor said, if somebody retires and is not an employee anymore, I hope we get one other unit back because that doesn't count as an employee unit anymore. So I'm sure it is. I just kind of thought of that. So anyway, I would support this.
Counselor Gotis.
I think we really need to have a work session with our 2C group. Because in my conversations, I think there wasn't clarity like we have of priority in general. Ideally, I'd like to have had that joint session with him prior to this, because this is a big conversation. It's a lot of money for us. It's a great opportunity for the community. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. I think that to the amendment of just $500,000, I feel that is so flippant and casual because we're just.
There's no amendment.
There's no amendment.
No, they
Okay.
didn't amend theirs.
Great. I think that suggestion is super casual and we got to have a conversation with our 2C committee, with the financial advisory board, with our city CFO, with our city manager. Just throwing $500,000 out of general fund is really tough. And we're doing it, I think, from a place of a good place of saying, well, we want dedicated city employees to secure the future. I think that's a really good thing. Holy Cross does it. The school district does it. Valley View does it. Every major employer does this except us. And we are going to start to lose employees because housing is more and more important if we do not create dedicated housing for our employees. Right? Our employees, I mean the community's employees. These are the people that sweep our streets, plow our streets, that do the work that keep our communities together, that allow the employees of Valley View and Gould Construction and everybody else to get to work and to be able to have water when they turn on the tap. So I think I know we have the legal ability to restrict this to City of Glenwood Springs employees. I think that is a political conversation that doesn't necessarily need to be had in this meeting, but I do think we need to have that with our 2C committee. And if a recommendation were to come out that said, hey, half of this goes to City of Glenwood Springs employees, City of Glenwood Springs employees, and half of it goes to the community in general, I think that still fulfills the intent and the will of the community and gets our the community to be able to have clean streets, clean downtown, and a functioning government that makes everything else work. I heard Habitat say a number of times that we're investors in this project. And as an investor, I think this is a great conversation we should have had in an executive session because we're being asked to be an investor in a project and to negotiate, but I don't know the price of the project, the overall project. I don't know what the other investors are bringing to the table. As a steward of public tax dollars, I have no idea if we're getting a similar value to other investors, school district, because they can't tell us. So I think that having an executive session where we find out these things and can be told these things is just being responsible to the public and for public dollars. I don't feel like an investor at all in this if I can't know just the basics of what everybody else is being asked for and how we are partnering when I don't know what any other partner is bringing. So I think, I would like to know first, once it becomes public record, what the school district is going to be bringing to this, just so we know where we stand. So my suggestion I mean, it sounds like we have a motion on the table. We're gonna have a vote probably. But I would suggest that we delay this so that we can find out what others are bringing to the table, so that we only know where we stand, and we could be the last money in. I'm sorry, Shelley, you got something? Okay. I just have a hard time not knowing where we stand in relationship to every other public entity. I think with PD Commons, the thing that makes me feel a little bit better is with PD Commons are at some point going to be Glenwood Springs employee housing. The first time those homeowners, close on that deal and they get a job the next day after closing, they can come and work up here and they can live there. They won't necessarily have to live and work in the community. They can live in that community and work up here. Or they'll sell to somebody else. And the second time they sell, it can be somebody in the region. They can work up in Aspen. So I'm glad that we can move affordable housing forward in the region and work as a regional partners. But I fear that we need to be reserving this 2C money for the benefit of our employees. And I don't know that this accomplishes that.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I haven't had a chance to comment. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of comments. I'm so thankful that we engaged in a really robust discussion. I feel like there were some things that came to light that I think all of us know what we're voting on. And I want to commend Counselor Zielinski for the really good big picture, 30,000 foot. I struggled with the fact that you guys didn't include anything tangible. There's no agreement. There's no, this is allowed, this isn't allowed. That's hard. This is a lot of money. In past, when we've given you land and other things, there was that agreement within it. And that is, I feel like, part of how we make good decisions. I also recognize the uniqueness of the situation. I recognize that a community that is development averse because of the significant developments that we've seen and the dust in the air and the construction trucks driving. This is one of those projects where they don't have to tolerate that. This is an opportunity that overnight, and to respect those tenants that live there, that is their home right now. I want to really honor, and I appreciate that you're giving them the first opportunity to purchase. So all of that aside, I was like, whoa, hold your horses. I'm not sure I want to get behind a project where I just don't know a lot about it, where we cannot guarantee definitively that Glenwood employees are going to have X, right? But then with 88 units, statistically, what we know is that 50 to 60% are going to be Glenwood employees. In fact, my guess is probably about 60 of the 88 units will be, which if you do the math, that's about 16,000 per unit, give or take, maybe a little bit more. That's a pretty palatable application or allotment of the funds, the 2C money, meaning that, if a lot of these other projects, you guys came to us with Cowden, not Overland, Cowden, and we gave you a parcel of land that easily could have sold, making it $80,000 to $100,000 per unit. This is 16,000 for each one of those to be a Glenwood employee. To me, this is meeting that goal of 2C funds. And that, this is money that our community said, put towards essential housing. That's what they said over here. And over here, they said, don't build anything because I don't want more construction. This meets in the middle and it satisfies what we need in this community right now. It is not perfect. And I commend everybody who's dug into it, but please stay in touch with us. Keep us abreast of it. To Counselor Godis's point, it's a little weird to not know what the cost is. It's not the normal process. It feels a little uncomfortable. So stay in touch with us when things can be public. If we're truly an investor, we need to be educated and updated immediately. So I will be supporting this evening. And yes, let's go ahead and call the question.
It passes. It's unanimous.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and take a break. Oh, there's another motion. Really? Okay. Counselor Sachter, go.
Related to what Counselor Kaup had mentioned, I would move that that we make available up to another $500,000 if there's a capital shortfall or call from Habitat. Either it could be another grant or loan as needed, subject to at least a nod from the majority of the Workforce Housing Board, whether it be a special meeting or otherwise, that we consider that as needed.
Counselor Cap?
I'll second that, just subject to terms to be determined.
Do we need long discussion on this or do we want to just call the question? Okay. Yep. Counselor Gotis.
Again, $500,000 of, without, just from the dais, without the advice of our 2C or FAB board in advance of the motion, I think is flippant. I think it's reckless. I cannot support it. I think that I'm not opposed to it, but we are going to, I believe, next month, start to be having, I'm sorry, in August. So in about 45 days, we're going to be having budget discussions for 2025. I feel much more comfortable about having this conversation through the budget process that's going to be happening in 45 days than just throwing out $500,000 on a dais on a whim as a loan without recommendation from boards or commission outside of the budgeting process.
Counselor Dem.
Thank you. I would feel better if this was strictly a loan and came out of 2C money. So it's going to be replenished when they pay it back and it goes right back into the tax where it should come from.
Counselor Sachter.
So the motion would be subject to a nod, a yes from the majority of the Workforce Housing Board. I have no problem changing it to a loan, and it could be extremely generous terms in terms of interest delay, that to be negotiated. So I would amend that motion and then I'll have a
2C money.
comment.
The only thing I'm adding is that I wish the money would come from 2C money.
That's what I'm
Oh,
intending.
okay.
I'm intending all along that this
Okay.
be 2C money.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Counselor Zelinski. Oh, do you want
And
to?
I
have a
will
comment.
amend my motion. I'll just comment, though, that I was at the 2C board when they made the recommendation for the $1 million, and the group was contemplating more money. They were open to more money up to council discretion. So that's why I think it's appropriate to put this on the table if it's needed. That's a very short timeline on the project. So if we can help this happen, again, terms to be determined.
Counselor Zelinski.
So, yeah, I think that the message that this sends to me is that this board is very interested in not letting this project have a shortfall. And so we are trying to support that financially and putting that intention in like official terms, correct?
Correct.
Counselor Gotis.
Just a clarification question on the motion. Is the motion to refer this to the 2C work committee for a recommendation?
The motion is.
Oh, hold on. Okay, you got to stop touching it for a minute. There you go.
The motion is if there's a shortfall and ask from Habitat, that we approve up to another $500,000 with the nod with prior approval from the Workforce Housing Board, and it is from their funds.
That would be referred to.
Yes,
Before it comes back to us?
yes.
Okay.
You know, I feel like if we haven't learned anything up here, I'm like, we can't go so fast. This was not a discussion item. This was not part of it. You're saying it came up, but I feel like we need to slow down. If you need to come back, you're welcome to go back to 2C and ask them. I feel like it's premature to move this forward, so I won't be supporting it. Counselor Schachter.
I just might add what Shelley said. There was, and it changed, that the applicants changed their request from workforce housing, from loan to grant. Nevertheless, there was support on workforce housing, and there was even appetite for additional funds. And there was even some comment after the fact, which has no bearing directly on this, that the applicant didn't ask strong enough as far as what they really wanted. So that's why this motion is on there, that we at least open the door for workforce housing to know that if applicant asks and they approve, that we're willing to up it for the same proportion of original units.
Counselor Zelinski.
So can we possibly amend the motion rather than saying that we approve it? Because that's putting the cart before the horse. But we amend the motion to say that, I don't know, we can't motion that we ask the applicant to come to us, but like that we would ask, I don't know, somehow that we get the recommendation to 2C if there's a funding shortfall, that they go to 2C to ask for more funds. I just feel like we have really very clearly stated that we are going on that board's recommendation. So to make a motion to approve it feels like we're doing an end run. So is there a way to amend the motion language that, or do we just say in closing, if you guys are short of money, come back to us? How about that? Is that like
Exactly what I just said.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's
Go
what
back to 2C.
come back to 2C.
Yeah.
But I don't think we need a motion.
But there is a motion on the table, so unless you guys want to withdraw it and just say, Council.
Well, was it to approve it?
Mhm.
All right.
Can I read back the motion?
Yes.
Yeah, read back the motion, would you?
Make available 500,000 if the applicant comes back with a shortfall, either a grant or a loan with the majority vote from WOFAB, and the amendment is only a loan from 2C.
Right.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to withdraw the motion.
Okay.
And I don't know if the seconds are wrong. What I would say is, if there's a shortfall or a willingness to accept more capital for the same proportion of units, go to workforce housing. If it takes a special meeting, get it done, and then come back to us. I believe there's a willingness up here to consider those terms as necessary.
Great.
That be
Do you need? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, can you just turn on your lights and we'll just make sure that it's officially on the record? Thank
I
you.
withdraw my second.
Okay, great. Well, I wanted to just take a break. I would have just told you on the break if you needed more to come back. Yeah. But, anyway, thank you all. Thank you for your hard work so far. We appreciate everything. Hannah, thank you as well. And we will go ahead and take a 5-minute break and come back. Sorry, you guys. Okay, we are back in session. Thanks, everyone. Right. We are moving on to item number 13. Is that right? 13, okay. We'll let Carl jump into that one.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. What you have before you is resolution 2024-23. This is as we work through the annexation process. You'll recall earlier in May, we had a resolution finding the petition for annexation to be substantially complete. This is the next step in that process, which is finding the property in question is eligible for annexation, which primarily means it has the 1/6 contiguity with the city that it needs to be eligible for annexation, and that also more than 50% of the property owners asking to be annexed had signed the petition. In this case, 100% had. This really just acknowledges that it meets statutory requirements and referring it over for further proceedings in front of the Planning Commission to come back to you with a formal recommendation on annexation or not, and on what kinds of terms. I will say I did have a conversation with the applicant's son, and I believe he is also a partial owner on the property earlier this week. The owner is in his mid-90s. The son was in New Mexico, and unfortunately, Zoom is not one of the skill sets that he had. He apologized that he couldn't make it up for the meeting from New Mexico tonight. We did have a discussion that I said, really, this is a ministerial act, and I thought that would be fine, and that we could have further discussions about what they wanted to do with the property, and it gets handed over to Hannah's department. So with that, happy to answer any questions. But like I said, this is really just a next step in the process.
Councilor Wyman.
Carl, could you explain a little bit about how annexation works? I think there's a misconception out there that the town just goes and grabs land.
Oh, yeah. Not one of the choices. So annexation is initiated by the property owner filing what is called a petition for annexation. And once that is found to be complete by your city clerk and staff, it comes before you for that finding of substantial compliance with the statutory requirements of the petition. Then the next step is to come in front of you to consider whether or not the elements, the basic statutory requirements for annexation have been met, which in this case is primarily contiguity and ownership. It is something that we can't reach out and grab property. If we were doing that, that would be a condemnation, not an annexation. An annexation is a legislative act that is initiated by the property owner. You as a property owner can also initiate an annexation of property. Obviously, the city owns lots of property that is outside the corporate boundaries for a variety of reasons. So in both of those cases, though, annexation is initiated by the property owner, not by the city.
Thank you.
Councilor Kaup.
I was not seeing any other questions, so I was going to make a motion, but if there's another question, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Gotis.
And maybe you answered it, Carl. This is a legislative action, not a land use issue. So this is not subject to quasi judicial rules.
The annexation itself is not. I would imagine that you're going to see a parallel development application occurring at the Planning Commission when they make the recommendation on annexation. But certainly, as a legislative act, there will be far more negotiation around it if it moves forward. And also, frankly, you don't, with an annexation, you have more flexibility because it's not already within the city, subject to whatever zoning, development rights, that kind of thing. You have a lot more flexibility to exact things that the city might think are in its best interest as part of that process.
And the action for tonight, just to be clear, simply is to say this has reached a certain threshold and they're referred back. What if we say we don't think it does meet that threshold? I mean, I guess why is this coming before us? Because
the statute says it has to.
And so if we say no, for whatever reason, then what are the remedies if this person still wants to be annexed?
Well, you'd have to find it, and I copied in the entire statute for you. So you would have to find that it didn't meet one of those elements that it is required to meet.
Okay.
That's why I said it's kind of a ministerial act, because if it does meet those elements, you're really required to move it on. You haven't decided. I mean, you have ample opportunity in the future to decide not to annex the property.
Mhm.
This is just saying it is eligible to be annexed.
Okay. Thanks.
Are you gonna ask a question? Are you gonna make a motion?
I would like to make a motion.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna ask a question then. So historically, when we annex it, we establish a density, correct?
Yeah, you are required to, as part of the annexation, to zone within 60 days after annexation, or else it comes in with the zoning most analogous to what it has in the county. So typically what we see on an annexation is usually a development proposal that goes with the annexation, as well as a recommendation on zoning, which your planning commission will do for you on what it thinks would be appropriate if you're inclined to annex.
Yeah, and the closest, the just adjacent to this is city, correct?
That's correct. It's contiguous to the city. So it would be, that's what I was saying, is the statutory requirement is 1/6 contiguity with the city. So it meets that. So it's like right on the edge. It's not like going down the road. It's not a flagpole or anything like that. It's
Very
literally a parcel right next to the other city parcels.
significantly small parcel as well.
Yeah, it's not very big.
Okay, great. Counselor Cap,
Okay,
it's your turn.
thank you. I would like to make a motion that we, to approve resolution 2024-2022. 23.
Oh, hold on one second. I'm so sorry.
2024-22.
Before we do that, I want to open it up to public comment.
Do we do that for resolution?
Yep, we're gonna do it for everything now. So I am so sorry to interrupt you, but I looked down and saw comment. So anyone here for this? Anyone online to discuss this annexation? Okay, well,
okay.
Oh, sorry, it is on attendees. Sorry,
I thought it was on it is. panel. It's on attendees. Okay, I'm gonna close the public comment and I apologize again. Counselor Cap, please go ahead.
Okay. Making a resolution, I guess there's a typo on the top of the resolution, but resolution 2024 is it supposed to be 23?
The agenda is 23, and I think you're right. In the packet, it's 22.
Okay, so whichever resolution
23.
it's supposed to be, 23. Finding that the property located at 1573 County Road 154 complies with applicable statutory requirements and is considered eligible for such annexation.
Second.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the question.
Yes, Counselor Zelinski. Yes, Mayor Wusso. No, Counselor Godus. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Dame. Yes, Counselor Weimer. Yes, Counselor Kaup. Yes, Counselor Schechter. It passes 6-1.
Thank you. And thank you to the applicant and Carl's office as well. We'll move on to item 14. This is 6th Street North Landing projects and contracts.
Good evening, Council. Ryan Gordon, the city engineer. So this is to approve the contracts for 6th Street North Landing. There's a slight modification to the numbers that you see for procedural reasons. So that is, we need to, well, let me step back and describe what happened. So the project came in, we went out to bid, one bidder, Gould Construction was the sole bidder. Costs were greater than we had budgeted, so we had some conversations with Gould. The procedure, how it has to work within the CDOT realm, which this falls into, primarily due to the grant that we have with CDOT, is we need to award the original project to Gould. Afterwards, and what I want to do today in your resolution is to then de-scope essentially the work and the items that we've talked with Gould to get the project under budget. We need to, on our side, take this back to CDOT and do some paperwork to show that we are reducing scope and why we're reducing scope. So again, the original, and the other nuanced is, these are two separate projects that we bid together, right? So there's a couple numbers in there that we're going to spew off, but essentially we're awarding the project in whole, but we have to award the 6th Street portion separately, just given that there's a CDOT grant component to it. So a mouthful there, but let me just sort of reiterate what's going on. So Original proposal from Gould for 7th Street, or excuse me, for 6th Street was $7,197,496.30. In discussions with Gould, we have a revised budget of $5,525,878,000.80. So North Landing has a set budget. Again, we don't have CDOT participation, so this doesn't have to go through that procedure of $1,541,124.70. Carl, do you want to
Yeah,
add to
I was
this?
gonna jump in and try to help a little bit. And we gave Marco the breakdown on a motion if you're inclined to approve. CDOT would like to see this original award, and then you guys approve a change order, a descope change order as part of tonight's procedure at that reduced number. That's just the process they go through. And we're asking that you take this in two motions, one for 6th Street and then one for North Landing.
Are there any questions for staff? Counselor Kill.
Just a quick question, and looking at the budget, we had 2.1 million, I think, carryovers for 6th Street in 2024. Where are the other, is there another line item in there for North Landing? Or I'm just wondering are we asking for more allocation out of A&I, or is the 2.4 that's shown in the memo covered in the A&I budget?
Yeah, so the 2.4 million is our contribution that we carried forward from last year. There's also a $1.75 million reserve for 6th Street that we released last year.
Oh, great. Okay. All right, thank you.
We'll open it for public comment. Is anyone here for public comment? Anyone online for this item for public comment? We will close public comment. Oh, did you have a question or you want to make a motion? Okay, I think that Marco had his hand up first, so we'll go with Marco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in item 16, I move to approve the original construction contract to Gould Construction for 6th Street for $96.30. At the same time, I approve a change order to descope the project by $1,671,617.50 and not to exceed an amount of $5,525,878.80. No, absolutely not.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And in the same item, Madam Mayor, if I may, I move to approve the construction contract. I move to approve the construction contract to be awarded to Gould Construction for North Landing for $1,541,124.70.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Yay! We've got people at the back of the room, including Jillian Sutherland, our DDA director, celebrating this, and we're very grateful. Thanks, everyone, for all your hard work. Yeah, we're excited. Thank you. You want to just transition right into Southbridge?
I would like to, yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Great. Again, your city engineer, our Southbridge update. So really not many updates. The one update is we had a public meeting scheduled last couple days ago, June 17th. That is pushed to July 17th. That is a meeting with the Cardiff Glen HOAs. There's 3 of them, Cardiff 1, Cardiff 2, and then Solstice. We're moving that again just to July 17th. We're working on getting that issued and posted for everybody. Outside of that, we're kind of just doing a few little things in the background. Our primary goal here is to get our IGA with CDOT signed. And once we get that, we can kind of get all the other pieces in place, get our consultant on board, kind of get the grant monies allocated, and then hit the ground running. That's the update.
That's the update. And Hannah's not even here to tell you did a good job. Oh, there she is. I'm sorry. Sorry, Hannah. He did great, didn't he? It's concise. Okay. But do we have any questions? Counselor Schechter.
Promise to be quick. Right away, has that been negotiated or still in process?
No, it's still in process. So we're still having those discussions.
Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Godus.
I appreciate even when you say I don't have a lot of updates, that you come up and you say, don't have a lot of updates. Just that constant communication back to us and back to the community on this $100-some million project is super important. And I think even just getting up there and saying, I got nothing is awesome. But thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Wyman.
Ryan, remind me of the timeline, the meetings with the HOAs. Has that happened?
Yes, July 17th
Oh,
from
okay.
6 to 7:30 and is going to be hosted at Sopris Elementary.
Cool.
Any comments? There's not really anyone in the room who might be commenting. Anyone online? Meryl, I see you're here. Thank you. If you have anything you want to add, please put your hand up. We'll go ahead and close the public comment section and bring it back to council. Thank you so much. I don't
Thank
think there's
you.
any action.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Okay. We're gonna move on to item number 16. Ordinance 2024-12, amending title 060-1608-2, ground snow loads.
Good evening, council, Madam Mayor, Hannah Klossman, Community Development Director, and also tonight playing engineer with Ryan Gordon's help. Very simple ordinance to change Title 60 for a ground snow load as supported by the Structural Engineers Association of Colorado, changing it from 50 to 40 pounds per square foot.
Changing it from 50 to 40?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all I have for you.
Okay. Questions for staff? Counselor Gotis, question.
No, I just was ready to make a motion after we take public comment.
Do we have any questions up here? Okay, you're lit, so I'm gonna turn you off. Any public comment on that? Anyone here? Anyone online that would like to discuss this? Okay, we'll close public comment and we will go back to Counselor Gotis.
I move, Madam Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 2024-12, amending title 060.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Thank you. Well done. Okay. Let's see, just to point of clarification, we did item number 17. We have continued it to another meeting. So we'll move on to item number 18, council comments. Go ahead and light up your mics. Anyone have any comments? Councilor Dunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I, in my travels through town, I see things that I think could be improved. And I don't know if this fits here or not because Matt's not here and I think both items will go into his department. I've been watching the river surfers, the wakeboarders going under the bridge and then clambering up the hillside of the river and almost breaking their ankles going up that hill and then trying to, run the gauntlet across the street to do it all over again. So I don't know if there's anything in the budget. I don't know if we can put that into the budget for next year to just kind of do a little bit more of a developed area so they can actually go up and either an underpass or go up the hillside if it's cheaper and then have a striped crosswalk across Midland. One thing I notice, and I see it every day, and it's kind of funny because they're always like, should we go, should we not go? And they have these boards and it's kind of entertaining. The other thing is I recycle quite frequently and getting to the recycle center is easy. Driving away from the recycle center feels like I'm on the moon. I assume that's what the moon would look like because it's the street right there is full of craters and it's holes and you don't know if you want to go left or right or straddle it. You can't. I understand that there is a design for that section of the road. I don't even know the name of the road, to be honest with you, but I understand that at some point there was a design planned for a street and some parking spaces. And I'm hoping maybe we can move that forward again at some point, maybe next year. Maybe we can be cognizant and put it in the budget, at least look at it. And the last thing is, and that's I've been on my mind for a while, but I never mentioned it because I don't think of it a whole lot. Down on 7th Street, I don't think anybody knows what the speed limit is because there's no signs up. And we have plenty of poles there. We could just put a 15 on one side and a 15 on the other side because I think that's what the speed limit is on 7th Street. I don't know. And the Bethel Plaza area. So, and we do have a sign department. We just found out tonight or this afternoon. I don't know where it is, but that sounds great. And so maybe we could just make a poll and put 2 little 15 PH signs up. So anyway, that's it. Just things around town. Thank you.
I don't think that that actually has a street name. I just looked it up. So maybe you.
The crater.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The crater.
Totally. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Counselor Schechter.
My turn?
Mhm.
Thank you. Couple things. Housing Commission is still 2 commissioners short. We definitely need to recruit. The last meeting, there was obviously frustration related to mixed messaging, the delay of lot size, the questionable duplex issues. So the Housing Commission is kind of wrestling with, what do we want? I think tonight helped. We just moved forward with 80 some units of housing. And we have to remind them periodically that it's not a failure, remind of all the things that have been done over the last few years that have been significant in terms of boosting housing. So maybe they need a little pep talk. It wouldn't hurt. I'd also add that the Pride event went extremely well. Incredible turnout, incredible joyous celebration, and no issues that came up, at least until 10 p.m. So it was an excellent event. Last, I just want to thank the manager and Shelley and others for getting us back on track with our strategic plan, actions and strategies. It looks like we're going to be doing it relatively soon at the breakfast meeting. So thank you. Thank you all.
Counselor Zelinski.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to recommend our new youth liaison board member for Parks and Rec. Claire Gillian was just voted in tonight, and it was a pleasure meeting with her, and I'm really excited to see that enthusiasm. And on that topic, we talked a little bit at our work session about possibly embracing more young people from the community on our boards and commissions. I think it's a great way to create a sense of community stewardship, and also, get some fresh perspective and new energy. So I don't know if we need to look at changing charters or rules or codes or how we do that. But if we could address that at some point, I think that would be, I think there's a couple of places where I think rivers, historic preservation, I think there's some really interesting places that we could get some youth voices in there. So I'd love to see that happen. And then this is just anecdotal, but I volunteered at Food and Wine over the last weekend. And one of the things you do is you run trash service. And it was, you sit there and you got your little paddles and you've got composting and you've got recycling and then you've got trash. And I never changed the trash bag. It was all either composting, and the bulk of it was composting. And then there was a little bit of recycling. But when I talked there was a representative there from Waste Management, and he said that more than 80% of the trash produced by that event is diverted from the landfill. And so, sometimes you hear a lot of chatter about nothing gets recycled. Where does it go? It does. And I think that if we could possibly get Liz to give us some numbers now that we're doing this, of where we, I know that we've talked a little bit about our recycling, and is it gone up? Is it down? Is it, now that we have this single hauler, and really convince people of just the validity and the value of separating your trash properly, taking care of your waste, and what a difference that can make. I think that we could do a better job of communicating, but those numbers are just dazzling when you see it in real life. I mean, I can't even stress how dramatic it was. So that's just a soapbox moment.
Thank you. Counselor Weimer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I think I'll touch on Counselor Dim and Counselor Zelinski's comments a little bit. As a frequent user of the landfill, fantastic topsoil, by the way, big plug for our topsoil. It's fabulous. I generally know the hours of the landfill and I know when to go and when it closes and everything, but there were a couple of weeks ago, it was unexpectedly closed.
Saturday.
And you don't know it until you're 3 miles down the road. And so I wonder, especially as we get into budgeting season, if there's a possibility of a sign just
great
as you
idea.
get
It's a
off.
great idea.
Thank you. If that is my only contribution to this tent, I will take it.
Yes, it's such a good
Because,
idea.
because just some sign right there, open, closed, very simple. The first person in can flip it and the last person out, because it was just a long line of pickups doing U-turns down at the landfill.
Steve, did you hear that one? That's a good one. Let's.
I didn't quite get exactly where the sign should be. Are you talking about at the bottom of the landfill or all the way down the bridge?
Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
as soon as you get off I-70
Yeah.
or somewhere, yeah. And then, if we're lucky enough to get Liz and, to come speak with us, I would also be super interested in, plans or thoughts around commercial composting, at the landfill, right? So
We just got a big grant for that.
for commercial composting.
Yeah. Mhm.
Then I will just
Look
put,
at what you're doing.
I'll just put my hat on that little sign that says open or closed. And I'm good.
There's an article, Andrea wrote a really great article about it.
I've been busy,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's okay, we get it. It was a good idea, wasn't it? It was a great idea. Okay. Okay, Counselor Gotis.
I was also there that Saturday of Memorial Day when I was not, it was a Saturday and I was like, wait a second, the landfill's closed on Saturday to observe Memorial Day, which is in 2 days. And so same thing, truck after truck, including mine. However, I want to say, that's not a criticism of, city staff because I took that the next weekend. My neighbors hated me having this huge raft trailer of twigs and branches and brush, which I didn't think they would accept at the South Glenwood thing, because there's a lot more over 4 feet and, is a collection of whatever. Usually I just have a burn slash pile burn in my backyard, but you guys don't like that either. And the woman who worked that, they called the cops on me, I guess. The woman who worked it was so nice. And I was like, hey, I'll just take it to the landfill. Like, and I was giving her every out. She's like, it's okay. And she was just so like customer service oriented, she didn't like it. And I was like, no, I'll just take it. I don't want to be a problem. I had another experience with trash. I called to get a larger recycle container and it couldn't get a hold because the wonderful one we get all the compliments about, Louisa. Yeah, she was on vacation. But then I got a hold of somebody the next day and they're like, I don't know, because we have to put a work order in. I'll get back to you. She never got back to me. I was a little upset, but literally 180 minutes later, that trash can showed up. And she didn't know who I was. She didn't know who I was from anybody. It just happened. I don't think every once in a while I see somebody on social media talk about like, oh, the city came and did this. Thank you, city. Like, I just don't think we say that enough, or we recognize that enough to our neighbors, to each other, to the public. Like, stuff just somehow magically happens. It's like it's impressive. So thank you, city staff, for all you do. I agree with you, Marco. I have a Prius that bottoms out on the Moonscape Road, so I just turn right down the wrong way on the runway because I'm not going to bottom out anymore. I'm just not gonna...
So he's just acknowledged 2 things.
Absolutely. And to your other point, Marco, I got something serious. I think your thing about the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, we absolutely don't need it. And the reason we don't need it is because that street was designed by our wonderful city staff and the DDA that designed it in a way that I have never seen anybody, I'd never observed myself speed as an issue. I don't see cars racing down there because, well, I have not observed it. Because I think that sign, that street is signed at 25 miles an hour, but no one goes that because it's designed in a way that makes you feel like you don't have to go that fast.
Isn't it also true that if a street doesn't have a street sign, that there's like so
25.
it's just automatically, yeah.
25 is
Yeah.
too fast.
Yeah.
Well, and it might be, and so maybe we do want to make it 15. All I've known is I think when we design streets, we designed that in a way that was thoughtful about pedestrians, that it wasn't just for cars, it was for events. And so I think in that regard, we have a lot of streets that read different. Midland obviously reads as a 50-mile-an-hour road, so it should be signed 45, obviously.
Because that's what he drives it at. That's number 3.
I absolutely do.
Yes, hold on. Are you done?
Sure.
On the topic of 7th Street, one thing I have observed around town, right there under the bridge, kind of right where the stairs land, because it's brick and it's under the bridge, I think a lot of times people who aren't familiar with their community don't recognize that that is a road, and they just kind of will dart out. So maybe we could do a sign that has like a pedestrian crossing if we don't have in the budget for like one of the blinker things, just something to kind of give people a heads up. Cause I've definitely had people just like, they're like the bunny rabbits in the desert. They just like walk right in front of you. So that would be, yeah, there's no curb, there's no designation, it's brick. It looks like a walkway. So I think maybe in recognizing that might be a good one.
That's great. Counselor Schachter, have you already, haven't you spoken? Oh, okay,
You mentioned.
go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, we've talked for months and months about council reaching out to the paper and doing a council column. I don't know what'll happen with Slate, but we keep talking about it. I've drafted one that I'm willing to take editing from council if you want to do it as a first shot. It's a positive one we can do as an opinion or not, but we keep talking about it and it never happens.
Yeah.
So there's one I drafted that's subject to any amount of editing you want. If you wish, that we could submit if you decide to.
Maybe, okay, perfect. We'll get some direction and maybe bring
Thank
it
you.
back to a future meeting. Thank you. Counselor Couch, did you have a few additional things?
Just one
Okay.
very quick.
Oops, go ahead.
I hit my button again. I just wanted to acknowledge, I was gone at the first meeting in June, and I wanted to acknowledge a longtime member of our community that passed away at the end of May, and his name was Hal Sundin. I don't know how many of you might have known him, but I think he was almost 98 years old. But he served on city boards and commissions, particularly Transportation Commission, because he was an old engineer and just a delightful gentleman. Did a lot with the 100 Club and just, I just think it's nice to acknowledge and remember, people like that in the community when they're gone. And I don't think they're having a service or anything, but I just wanted to acknowledge how.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kelly.
thanks.
I have just a couple updates as well. One is that a few of us had requested that I reach out to some of the local radio stations and just look for another forum to make sure that people know what we're talking about at meetings, what's coming up. So I did do a segment with Katie and Kay. They were great to work with. I have gotten feedback that it aired. And if anybody has an interest in joining me for one of those, let me know. Otherwise, I simply look at what we did last time, give an overview on what was decided, where we went with it, and also just an overview on what's coming up on a future meeting. So I'm simply looking for all opportunities to educate and communicate with our constituents and our community at large. So the next thing is to say that I said it earlier, Strawberry Days this weekend, but as a reminder, our staff, including police and fire, all the emergency services works extra hard this weekend. So we just a shout out to you guys. We really appreciate all you do. And we do know it is extra work. So thank you for that. It's something that it is a time honored tradition that when I didn't live here, we would come back, for this weekend. And it's something we always look forward to. So I hope everyone has a great Strawberries weekend, and a shout out to the chamber, because the chamber since 2022 has been 85% renewable, meaning that they do exactly what Food and Wine does. And they've been doing it for a handful of years now, or a few years. And I think the chamber, just recognize that Strawberry Days is not a requirement of the chamber. This is not something they are forced to do or have to do. It costs money for them. It's not always a profitable event. And yet they continue to do it because they are stewards of the community, both the business community and the community. And I truly appreciate all they do. So thank you to all the gals at the chamber. And last, because I think it's a night to talk about deficiencies in traffic lights and streets, I'm gonna put one in there too. And that is from Village Inn crossing over towards, Subway's not open right now, but Village Inn over to Subway. That crosswalk is constantly in use and it's very dark in the evening and it's very hard to see people. So I know I've said it for a few years now and we still don't have a crosswalk sign or something there. And I really think it would be helpful. So it has now been made public. Did you want to say what?
Oh, yeah, I just had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
John,
When you're on 82 and you're going across the bridge and you're turning right, because I'm sure I'm breaking the law and I just want to make sure.
Number 4.
Yeah. I had somebody.
Click on the,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Hold on, I'm filming you.
Go ahead.
When you turn right, like you're going down to 6th Street, you're coming north on the bridge, you're coming over the bridge, over the Grand Avenue Bridge.
Okay.
And you're going to West Glenwood. There's a turn lane.
Yeah.
You get in that turn lane and that allows you to get onto 6th Street and go to like Hotel Colorado. But there's also a dotted lane. So if you get in that turn lane and then go straight into the roundabout, is that how you're supposed to do? Or are you supposed to enter that from the 2 lanes of traffic? Because I saw somebody get cut off there really bad on the other day. And it's
No, the
confusing.
lanes are designed to go to west and eastbound I-70. That turn lane is to enter the roundabout or go down 6th Street.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, did you say you broke the law?
I would like for you
He
to
did.
speak to my source of provided attorney.
He did.
Oh.
That does not cover your bad driving.
It is if I'm going to a city event.
I don't believe that. No.
Social
not.
hour,
I
Marcus?
can write that off on my taxes, so you can't use that. I do think that that crosswalk though is something that warrants some energy, but I'll put it out there in the report and see what you guys think. So, I think that we are now to our city manager.
I think I had everything I needed covered today, so nothing from me.
Great. Carl?
So many choices, but I'm just gonna let it go. Nothing this evening, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Social event location, or actually we had no correspondence for everybody online. So, social event.
We'll be reconvening at Doc Holidays.
Awesome. I will look for a motion to adjourn. Council Dem.
I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second?
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all. Have a great evening.